This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of Disney, more specifically, what Disney's doing wrong in 2025. And what it comes down to it is you can see the issue with Disney if you contrast current Disney with the great Walt Disney himself and the humble beginnings of just the Disney Corporation. Because what Disney's history is built on is a bunch of wild gambles that succeeded because Walt was so obsessed with quality and so obsessed with making a connection with the target audience. But the main thing that Walt always was trying to do was just wow people, bring the next big attraction in front of their eyes to show them something they've never seen before. And granted, in 2025, it's a little bit harder. But it's hard to, conceptualize how difficult what people did in the past, which is now common for anybody. Think about something like Steamboat Willy, for example, which was unheard of at the time, not simply because of the richness of the soundtrack. Well, so many classic movies, silent films, old classic animations have soundtracks, of course. Steamboat Willy made a name for itself because, like I said, it didn't just have maybe a simple, melody around it, some symphony score behind it. It actually had sound effects like steam, whistles blowing, Mickey playing some percussion, the wait. I can't do it right now, but it's something like that. And again, while that seems so just archaic right now and just so primitive compared to what even single people are doing on YouTube by themselves, back for Walt Disney, again, this was a huge gamble. Walt basically bet his entire life savings on Steamboat Willy, and it paid off. And that was just the first example. I would say Walt has made three big gambles in his life, and each one pays off bigger and better than the last. Well, he probably made some other gambles as well, and we'll get into that actually, I guess. But the first one just being Steamboat Willy, and that was because it was just so technically hard to pull off. Because when you really break it down, what Walt had to do for Steamboat Willy was basically have that soundtrack play once in its entirety. The music, the sound effects had to play in one continuous loop while it was recorded. And then, just God willing, it had to sync up with the actual animation of Steamboat Willy. And I've heard that the first time they recorded it, it did not sync up, and they had to spend a whole bunch of money re-recording it. So, again, it was quite the risky endeavor. But because of Walt and his silly symphony, he basically imagined animation. And it's just insane that Walt Disney, mostly because of his very catchy name, was just able to just become a icon within the public. I hear that he was just one of the first well-known cartoonists, and he was just really good about getting his name out there. I hear he wasn't even a great artist, but just again, that name, Walt Disney, it's just like in The Founder where they're talking about McDonald's. It really does just come down to a name. But most businessmen would be satisfied after Steamboat Willy's success. The Disney Corporation was able to license Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse became a household name. There was a whole bunch of cartoon shorts, merchandise. People just already fell in love with Mickey Mouse. And again, Walt Disney just continued to establish his animation prowess through pushing the silly symphonies as far as they can go. So again, any businessman would have been like, I'm happy. Let me put that feather in my cap. We're gonna just, we're feeling good. I made it. I win. But not Walt. He says, I want to go one step further. Sure, we can make a 7-minute cartoon, but what happens if we make a full-length feature film? A 90-minute endeavor 24 frames a second. How many drawings is that? A lot. And this Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, what a risky move that no publicly traded company is going to make such a financially risky move. I think they're even maybe legally required to avoid doing things like Walt Disney with publicly traded companies and things like that. I don't think you can just like gamble the entire company's future on a single picture. And that's what Walt did with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it's insane to just watch. If you have not seen Snow White in a while, check it out. I mean, just the beginning shots alone, just conceptualize that this was just created by an army of people drawing, planning, measuring, coloring, shooting, using photography to actually shoot the frames and then put them on the reel. It is just insane, the craftsmanship that had to be basically invented, because there's always, animation existed for a good probably 20 years before that point of Snow White, 15 years. But this, at least in America, is the first time you really see anybody trying to push realism to a point. But there's just a more sophistication in the drawing of, say, Snow White than a lot of the previous cartoons, even if they are Silly Symphony, which were a little bit more higher quality than a lot of the other cartoons of the time. I mean, this was a golden age of animation in general between, like, Tom and Jerry. But regardless, getting ahead of myself, with Snow White, though, it took like 3 years. I heard it was almost impossible for Roy to secure the financing, because it's one of those things where the bank agrees reluctantly at the beginning. Walt's already blown their socks off before, but banks are still banks, so they were reluctant. And then you can only ask for so much money before banks can be like, what are we actually giving you this cash for? And, we're not talking about like just like thousands of dollars in 2025 money. And like 2025 money, it was just, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars at a time. Again, over budget, but it came in, I believe, on time. I would have to check that. But again, if it was not the smashing success that it was, from box office to merchandise, who knows where the Walt Disney Company would be today. And then the final big gamble that I would just say really redefines a genre, because again, Steamboat Willy redefines animation. Snow White redefines, it just shows what 2D animation, or just animation at the time, can do. At least in America, I don't think there was really anything like Snow White at the time, and if there was, it clearly wasn't to the caliber of Snow White, or marketed properly. I don't know. There's a reason why, though, people are still watching Snow White. The only reason I keep saying this maybe is I think I saw some YouTube thumbnail, title one time with some buzzword like, Snow White wasn't the first animated movie. So that's why I'm getting all hung up on that. But anyways, it completely creates a genre. And then the third big risk that Walt takes that completely remakes an industry is the theme park industry with Disneyland. It's hard to imagine a world without Disneyland, or just that idea of a family theme park, because it just seems so ingrained within at least American culture. I mean, Disney parks are a global phenomenon almost on every single continent. So it might be more than just an American thing, but when you just think of that IP-driven, happy-go-lucky park that you see referenced and parodied, satirized in so many media, you just know they're talking about Disney parks. And that's just because Walt, again, completely just made something unbelievable. And I know that Disneyland of when was it made? 1950, whatever. The original Disneyland is not what it is in 2025. There are still a lot of touches that Walt still put himself, but just the idea of Walt taking this chance, spending again all of this money, and it just paying off like gangbusters. And it's maybe just, what do they call it, survivor's bias, where you just look at something like Walt Disney and say, like, all you have to do is take a crazy chance and you're gonna succeed. Because not many people, a lot of people do take crazy chances, a lot of companies do take crazy chances, and they don't succeed. Again, all of these were places where everything could just go off the rails. But there's some qualities about Walt Disney that he had back then that ensured success, that maybe Disney of today is either just afraid of or forgotten. I don't know. So I know this has been a long way to get to this point here, but Disney, if you're listening, if your AI bots are listening, try to tune in for a moment, because the first thing you need to remember is that it's all about quality. Walt knew that if you were going to make something, it needed to be of the highest quality possible. I know that might be a little hypocritical coming from me trying to make these talking head videos and whatnot. All of the original Disney stuff that Walt touches just screams quality. Again, Steamboat Willy is just insane. Again, if you just put yourself in the audience of 1930 whatever, and that's just gonna blow your mind what you're seeing, when you're compared to what you're used to seeing. And then again with Snow White, it still looks so beautiful to this day. And then you're walking around Disneyland. That's what my favorite thing about Disneyland is, just the attention to detail. And that's what Walt did, is just such a thorough lens. He had such a distinct vision, and he didn't let anything compromise that vision. Maybe of course, he was unable to bring about his vision himself. And what I mean is, he wasn't maybe a particularly great animator or a particularly great artist, but he could find these amazing, talented people, so he could bring about his vision. And that's the key thing, is being able to just find these people to bring about this quality vision. And I just don't know if Disney so much cares about quality anymore as much as they are on ROI. Now, the caveat to that being is, how much do audiences nowadays even care about quality? How much does it really resonate? I mean, I'm not going to say that Super Mario Bros. Was a bad movie, but it's not a crazy great movie. A $1 billion box office? I don't know. I mean, but what I mean is people are going for the name, and I think that's what a lot of people do nowadays. They're going for the memes, they're going for the names. And when there is something that really resonates, do people react? I would say yes. Even if like something like Pick Inside Out 2 is a sequel, I feel like, people did see that was a movie with a beautiful message and whatnot. And again, I talked about this before, but Wish, Strange World, they just didn't really have that much heart. I just don't think that Disney has really, on the animation side, the true animation side, let's forget about the live action sequels, whatever, remakes. But when it just comes to the animation, I guess, I don't think they've really pushed themselves to make something just jaw-dropping for a while. I'd have to look at the list, but I don't think they've really pushed themselves artistically, creatively to their limit for a good while. And, maybe, and that's just some of the downside of losing 2D animation, is you kind of lose some of that magic. That magique I wanted to say, but I didn't have the confidence to say it, and now I just sound like a fool. But regardless, so yeah, they don't have that eye for quality. And then the other thing is, is Disney investing in R&D? Where is their research and development at? Because that's another thing Walt was always pushing. Whether it was that one device that was able to pan scenery at different speeds to better give the illusion of depth. I remember seeing a great special about him developing, well, not him personally, but Disney Corporation developing this technology to, again, make it seem like when a camera's panning across some scene, the rolling hills move a little slower than the middle ground, and then the stuff in the foreground are moving pretty fast, and it's just incredible. Going back to Steamboat Willy, I mean, in a sense, that was a bit of R&D. No one's done that before. And then Disneyland is riddled with examples of R&D, from the animatronics to a lot of the rides. I mean, the first of their kind. There's a lot of those rides were the first of their kind. So I want to know is, what is Disney doing nowadays to really push themselves, to really push the cutting edge of technology? Not that you can really expect Disney to be a technology company, but technology, entertainment has always sort of gone hand in hand. So I expect them, not to be like Apple or, Google, Facebook, whatever. Maybe they should be developing a little bit of Disney AI. AI could be a chance to really inspire some true Disney magic, some authentic Disney magic. Not to be one of those AI hype bros, but again, I just think there is some wild potential, and maybe there is stuff cooking under the hood of Disney that we have no idea. Again, I can just picture like a Disney sorcerer's hat where kids can like talk into or use like a magic wand and ask it questions, and maybe it talks. Again, there's just so much potential in 2025 for anything to just blow our minds. While I agree that you could use the excuse that we've plateaued for a while, I think there's been enough things cooking in the oven where something's gonna just blow off, blow our tops, and I think Disney can be the one that does that. But they have to not be afraid to take a risk, which again, can publicly traded companies, are they even legally obligated to take risks? Is there like a risk tolerance that they have to, adhere to? Do they need to get the shareholders to vote? I don't know how it works. And I don't know. It's just, without something radical changing, I don't see Disney completely dying. That's not what I'm afraid of. Disney is going to be here for the next 100 years and whatnot. And it's always going to be successful. It's always going to be a money printer. But is it just going to become, another face in the crowd of entertainment companies? Is it just going to become another DreamWorks or Paramount or whatever, when Disney used to really stand for something like in quality, innovation, risk? So if they're afraid to really, live the qualities that made Walt Disney so great, then again, I guess we're just going to have to settle for what we get. It's out of my hands. I can only just speak to what I'm seeing. And hopefully this message can be carried to someone in Disney's higher up. Because, again, I just think there is so much potential for a huge shakeup. And I think you can still do a huge shakeup, something really risky, in a safe manner, because Disney has Disneyland, Disney World, all the Disney parks throughout the country. They have Disney Plus. They have a bedrock. So, I mean, what's the harm of, I don't know, jumping in front of that train and seeing if you can pull something crazy off? I don't know. Well, that's just me. This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of entertainment.